Today I'm going to show you how to apply the Edit Poly modifier, and I'm going to turn this basic cylinder into a coffee cup that's sitting here on my desk. So obviously you need geometry to start with, so I've just created a basic cylinder using the create standard primitives, and I just selected cylinder and I created it. Since we're going to be modifying this and applying a modifier to this geometry, or this primitive more specifically, we want to make sure we have enough geometry to work with. So if I turn on edged faces, I can see all the polygons that make up this primitive shape. And this isn't quite enough, because if I turn these off, you can see that there's still kind of a hard edge around here. So I'm going to go into the modify, which is right next to create. And then here I can change the parameters of this primitive. So the sides are what's kind of concerning me, so I'm going to bump this up to 24. Now I'm not going to be dealing too much with the height of this, but just in case, I'm going to add some height segments, just in case I want to make some slight modifications there. Then I can add some cap segments if I'd like to, which I don't really need at this point, but I'll put one in there. So that gives me a little bit more geometry. You can see there's a lot more polygons in there, so if I want to twist it, it's not going to get all messed up. So the next thing to do is to apply the modifier. To apply a modifier, I'm just going to click on the drop-down menu here, and what I'm looking for is Edit Poly, which is right there. And this is modifier specifically you can actually also apply by right-clicking on object you have selected and say Convert to Editable Poly, right? But that isn't a modifier. Now, a modifier, let's find that again, as you can see, doesn't convert it. So if I turn on, let's see if I just make some quick changes to this and whoops, move stuff around and mess it up, I can turn off that modifier and it's going to take me back to the original object, right? So if I back up here, let's delete the modifier. So if I convert it to an editable poly, you can see that I don't have the option of going back to the original object. So using modifiers is better, because if you ever kind of mess up, you can just delete that modifier and start from that step. So let's go back to cylinder and apply that edit poly. So here I can start to make some changes. Obviously coffee cup needs space to hold liquid, so I am going to, one thing I want to do is I want to kind of create a hole in here. Before I do that, we should talk about different ways you can select objects. First, there's vertex. This allows you to take specific points, move them up and down. You can select edges and move them around. You can create select entire polygons, move them around, or you can grab entire objects to move around. For this, here's a great example. So if I were to, I want to select these polygons in here, and the way I'm going to do that is to go over to polygon, make sure I have select object selected, and move. And I'm just going to go in, let's go to my top view here. Oops. I'm going to select all these polygons. So the problem with this is that if I were to just move this down, it's actually not kind of doing what needed. There needs to be kind of that little lip on the coffee cup. So what I can do is I'm going to first, since I have those selected, I'm going to make those a little larger. So I'm going to go to Select and Uniform Scale. So as we discussed before, if I grab one of these handles, it's only going to go in one direction, right? So I want it to go in all directions, so I'm going to grab this middle part. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring that circle out to about there, right? And whoops. And I'm going to go back to move, but I still have that issue that when I have it selected, it's not creating that lip. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down to bevel right here, which is only available when you have using the edit poly modifier. And what this does is it keeps it where it is, but it cuts into it. And I can use the different views to kind of make sure I'm not going too far. I don't want to go through the bottom of the cup. So let's put it right about there. Oops. This goes through 2 steps. On the first click, it'll change the depth, and then the next one's kind of allow you to kind of fan it out. We just want it straight down, so I'm just going to align it right, and click it again. So now you can see that we've got a great start. Right? So I can see that it's starting to take shape. Another thing we can do is, like if I want to soften that ring that kind of looks like you're going to cut your lip on that, is if you select, I'm over in edge selection now, and I'm going to click on one lip or one side here, and I'm going to click ring. Oops, that's not what I wanted. I want to click loop. So what's going to do is select every single edge in a loop, right? The opposite of this, or not really opposite, but the other option is that if you have an edge selected, you can click ring, and it's going to select all of them in a ring. So in that situation, it grabbed those. If I clicked something on the top here and selected a ring, it's going to select all those on top. So we're going to go back to loop, and another one that I use quite often is called chamfer. I'm going to click on that, and I'm going to drag, and it's going to basically kind of soften that edge. And now I'm going to go back to edge selection. Oops. And I'm going to select loop again, and I'm going to use chamfer again, but the other option is you can hit this little settings window here, and it's going to create a little dialog right here that you can kind of mess with first. So I don't need more than one subdivision. And hit OK. Hit the check mark to finalize the change. So now you can see, let's turn off edge faces, that we're doing pretty good. The problem is the inside kind of looks unnatural, right? We never often see coffee cups with those ridges. But the outside looks nice and smooth. Now the reason for that is that smoothing hasn't been applied to these interior spots. So if I select one polygon, and then I hold down Shift and select another, it's going to select all those in a ring. And I'm going to go down here to the bottom where it says smoothing groups. Don't worry about that right now, but if I just hit auto smooth, I deselect, you can see that it's done what it did what it could to kind of smooth out those lines. And we can do that to the top too. You can see it's a little kind of jagged there. And auto smooth, auto smooth. And again, I'm doing the Shift select with the polygons and selecting the ring. Auto smooth. So there we have kind of the basic part of the coffee cup. You have some other options in here. Another one that I use quite often is that, you know, let's go back to edge select. If you need to create another kind of ring in there, you can go to ring, and you can go down to connect, and what that does is it creates another kind of subdivision in there. And this is, you know, as you get more complex, if that's something you need to do. But at this point I don't really need it, so I'll leave it out. So that's kind of, you know, creating the basic coffee cup. And just I'm going to create the handle, but again, there's kind of a zillion ways to do this. But I'm just going to show you just kind of another modifier for the sake of showing you one. So I'm going to go back to, basically, you know, the handle of a coffee cup is essentially kind of one object bent and molded into shape. If you think about it from a pottery standpoint. So what I'm going to do is just kind of create a bar, and I'm just going to create a box, and just make it about that high for now. As you can see under parameters, I have quite a few segments, and I really want to do that because if I have too few and I bend it, it's not going to look natural. So let's keep it around 24. So now I want to kind of bend it. So I'm going to go to my modifier menu, and I'm going to select bend. And now, as you can see, it doesn't look quite different, and that's because nothing has been done to it. So this is where I can actually go through the parameters and make some adjustments. So let's bend it. And obviously it's probably going to be 90 degrees. And then I'm just going to bend it kind of into shape. So looks like it's going to be 180 degrees. And I can also change the axis that it's bending on, which Z is correct in this case. If I were to go down here to box and actually change the number of segments, you can see, like if I had 3, that doesn't quite look natural. So I can go back in the modifier list and change this back to something a little bit more manageable. So I'm going to go back to bend. You can also change where the center of the bend is by some of the options in the specific modifier. It's going to vary by modifier, and again, utilize the help menu to kind of figure out which is going to be best for you. You can also see that that's kind of a thick handle, so I can just make it a little bit more. There we go. So now I kind of have the basic idea for my bend. There is a few more parameters in bend that you can mess with. You can change how much of it is bent. Doesn't really benefit us in this situation, so I'm just going to kind of leave it. So now what I want to do is I obviously want to put this in place, so I'm going to, oops, my bad. Turn it to 90 degrees. Put it, let's make it a little bit smaller. Now, obviously, this isn't the most interesting coffee cup in all of human existence, but it's providing you a basis to start with. So, from here, you can start adding more modifiers to kind of change the shape. For example, let's see, what can we do? Let's see what we can do with the taper modifier. This gives you a few more options. That's what I wanted. And we can just kind of mess with this to make it look a little less like a half circle. So that right there, it's a start. So obviously we put it there, maybe scale it out a little bit. So there we have kind of a start. And then if I want to, I can go and add an edit poly modifier, and I can go to these edges. Let's go to loop. Oh, actually I want that one. and I'm going to kind of soften those edges so they're not as hard. So I'm going to use the chamfer again to kind of make it a little bit more like something you'd want to hold as opposed to something that might slice open your finger. And go chamfer. So as you can see, that's a start, but that kind of gives you the basics of how to apply a modifier and then how to modify it. They will always exist in stacks. There are going to be some modifiers that are going to affect how things are stacked, and it'll give you a warning if it says, well, this isn't such a good idea. And I strongly suggest you listen to them at that point, because they're basically trying to prevent you from making something you can't undo. So, you know, the light bulbs next to it is going to toggle them on and off. So if I turn them all off, it's going to take me back to that original piece of geometry we created. So if I turn them back on, it's going to turn back into the beginning of our coffee cup.